Group number 1. Those who seek wealth unrighteously. 1. Some people seek wealth unrighteously, and once they acquire wealth, they do not make themselves happy, nor do they share their wealth and do meritorious deeds. They are blameworthy on 3 accounts. 2. Some people seek wealth unrighteously. Once they acquire wealth, they make themselves happy, but they do not share their wealth, nor do they do meritorious deeds. They are blameworthy on 2 accounts, and praiseworthy on 1 account. 3. Some people seek wealth unrighteously. Once they acquire wealth, they make themselves happy, and they both share their wealth and do meritorious deeds. They are blameworthy on 1 account, praiseworthy on 2 counts. Group 2. Those who seek wealth both righteously and unrighteously. For some people seek wealth both righteously and unrighteously, and once they acquire wealth, they do not make themselves happy, nor do they share their wealth and do meritorious deeds. They are blameworthy on 3 accounts, and praiseworthy on 1 account. 5. Some people seek wealth both righteously and unrighteously. Once they acquire wealth, they make themselves happy. They do not share their wealth, nor do they do meritorious deeds. They are blameworthy on 2 accounts, and praiseworthy on 2 accounts. 6. Some people seek wealth both righteously and unrighteously. Once they acquire wealth, they make themselves happy, and they both share their wealth and do meritorious deeds. They are blameworthy on 1 account, and praiseworthy on 3 accounts. Group number 3. Those who seek wealth righteously. 7. Some people seek wealth righteously, but once they acquire wealth, they do not make themselves happy, nor do they share their wealth and do meritorious deeds. They are blameworthy on 2 accounts, and praiseworthy on 1 count. 8. Some people seek wealth righteously, and once they acquire wealth, they make themselves happy. They do not share their wealth, nor do they do meritorious deeds. They are blameworthy on 1 account, and praiseworthy on 2 counts. 9. Some people seek wealth righteously. Once they acquire wealth, they make themselves happy, and they both share their wealth and do meritorious deeds. They are still attached to and caught up in the wealth. They use it without discerning its disadvantages, and they do not have the wisdom to free themselves or become masters over their wealth. They are praiseworthy on 3 counts and blameworthy on 1 count. Group number 4. Those who seek wealth righteously use it with mindfulness and wisdom and have a liberated mind. 10. Some people seek wealth righteously. Once they acquire wealth, they make themselves happy, and they both share their wealth and do meritorious deeds. They are not carried away by or caught up in their wealth. They use it by fully understanding its merits and disadvantages. They are freed by wisdom and are masters over their wealth. Such householders are excellent, distinguished, and supreme. They are praiseworthy on all 4 counts. This kind of analytic reflection, Vibhajja-vada, leads to clear and precise thinking and discrimination, which accords and is commensurate with truth and prevents confusion. A simple example from everyday life is the observation that someone speaks directly, bluntly, and outspokenly, and is unable to speak in a sweet-sounding way. It appears as if he covers up his bluntness and abrupt speech in the cloak of frankness. If one analyzes this situation more closely, one can conclude that this candidness and directness is a virtue, but the abruptness and outspokenness is a fault. Someone endowed with such qualities should acknowledge the deficiency in not speaking agreeably, rather than using directness as a pretext. If one wishes to bring virtue to fulfillment, one should make adjustments to those areas that are still faulty. Similarly, someone who speaks in a pleasing, sweet-sounding way is endowed with such pleasant speech as a virtue. But it is another matter whether one speaks candidly. If one does, this is considered another virtue. But if one does not, then this is considered a fault. In such a case, an additional factor which needs to be considered is whether this sweet-speaking person speaks with wholesome intentions, or whether he speaks out of a wish to deceive using a ruse. One should distinguish this factor with clarity to avoid confusion. In the case that one is looking to hire someone for a job, one chooses the candidate suitable to the job's requirements. Whether one needs someone who speaks pleasantly or someone who speaks directly. If the job requires a person who speaks pleasantly, one selects someone with this quality. Of course, the employer will also try to find someone who is honest. An outspoken person here needs not allude to his directness as way to get this job. Likewise, if the person requires a person who speaks directly, it is unimportant whether the candidate speaks pleasantly or not. The person not chosen for this job need not cite his soft-spoken, agreeable speech. Moreover, if one is making a psychological study by looking at the relationship between directness and bluntness, or between sweet-sounding speech and deceit, one should be clear about those factors under investigation. Analytic reflection, Vibhajja-vada, is precise and objective, corresponds with truth, and is aligned with natural laws. It is thus a model for those who wish to speak in a truly open and honest way. Monks, there are these 5 kinds of forest dwellers. What 5? 1. One who becomes a forest dweller because of ignorance and naivety. 2. One who becomes a forest dweller because he has lewd desires, because he is driven by desire. 3. One who becomes a forest dweller because he is mad and mentally deranged. 4. One who becomes a forest dweller thinking. 'Tis praised by the Buddhas and the Buddha's disciples. 5. And one who becomes a forest dweller for the sake of fewness of desires, for the sake of contentment, for the sake of eliminating defilements, for the sake of solitude, for the sake of simplicity. One who becomes a forest dweller for the sake of fewness of desires, for the sake of contentment, for the sake of eliminating defilements, for the sake of solitude, for the sake of simplicity, is the foremost, the best, the preeminent, the supreme, and the finest of these 5 kinds of forest dwellers. Buddha. Does your family give gifts, householder? Daru Kamika. My family gives, Venerable Sir, and those gifts are given to bhikkhus who are arahants or on the path to arahantship, those who are forest dwellers, alms food gatherers, and wearers of rag robes. Buddha. Since, householder, you are a layman, it is difficult for you to know. These are arahants or on the path to arahantship. If a householder, a monk who is a forest dweller, is restless, arrogant, fickle, garrulous, indiscreet in his talk, muddle-minded, lacking clear comprehension, unconcentrated, and with an agitated mind, with unrestrained sense faculties, then in this respect he is blameworthy. But if a monk who is a forest dweller is not restless, arrogant, and fickle, is not garrulous and indiscreet in his talk, but is vigilant, clearly comprehends, is concentrated with a one-pointed mind, with restrained sense faculties, then in this respect he is praiseworthy. If a monk who dwells on the outskirts of a village is restless, arrogant, fickle, garrulous, indiscreet in his talk, muddle-minded, lacking clear comprehension, unconcentrated, with an agitated mind, with unrestrained sense faculties, in this respect he is blameworthy. But if a monk who dwells on the outskirts of a village is not restless, arrogant, and fickle, is not garrulous and indiscreet in his talk, but is vigilant, clearly comprehends, is concentrated, with a one-pointed mind, with restrained sense faculties, then in this respect he is praiseworthy. If a monk who is an alms-food gatherer, who accepts meal invitations, who wears rag robes, who wears robes given by householders, then in this respect he is praiseworthy. Come now, householder, give gifts to the Sangha. How does an evil monk wander alone? Here an evil monk lives by himself in the borderlands, approaching families there. He obtains gains. It is in this way that an evil monk wanders alone. When he trains himself in solitude, he sits alone, lies down alone, and wanders alone, free from laziness, finds delight in the forest. Brahmins who practice various austerities succumb to craving, bound to rules and observances, practicing severe austerities for 100 years, but their minds are not rightly liberated. Those of low manner do not reach the far shore. There is no self-discipline for one fond of conceit, nor is there sage food for the unconcentrated. Though dwelling alone in the forest, heedless, one cannot cross beyond the realm of death. Having abandoned conceit, well concentrated with lofty mind, released in every respect, while dwelling alone in the forest, diligent, one can cross beyond the realm of death. There was a bhikkhu named Tera who lived alone and spoke in praise of the merits of living alone. He went to the village on alms alone, returned to his residence alone, sat in seclusion alone, and practiced walking meditation alone. Many monks went to the Buddha to ask about this monk. The Buddha sent for Venerable Tera and conducted the following conversation. Buddha: is it true, Tera, that you are a lone dweller and speak in praise of dwelling alone? Venerable Tera: yes, Venerable Sir. Buddha: but how, Tera, are you a lone dweller, and how do you speak in praise of dwelling alone? Tera: here, Venerable Sir, I enter the village for alms alone, I return alone, I sit alone in seclusion, and I practice walking meditation alone. It is in such a way that I am a lone dweller, and speak in praise of dwelling alone. Buddha: that is a way of dwelling alone, Elder, I do not deny this. But as to how dwelling alone is fulfilled in detail, listen to that and attend closely. I will speak. Here, what lies in the past has been abandoned, what lies in the future has been relinquished, and delight and attachment for present forms of individual existence has been thoroughly removed. It is in such a way that dwelling alone is fulfilled in detail. Venerable Vibhajja-vada, Venerable Sir, it is said, alone dweller, alone dweller. In what way is alone? In what way is one alone dweller? And in what way is one dwelling with a companion? Buddha, there are Vibhajja-vada, forms cognizable by the eye, sounds cognizable by the ear, odors cognizable by the nose, tastes cognizable by the tongue, tactile objects cognizable by the body, mental phenomena cognizable by the mind that are desirable, lovely, agreeable, pleasing, sensually enticing, tantalizing. If a monk seeks delight in them, frets over them, and welcomes them, delight, Nandi, arises. When there is delight, there is infatuation. When there is infatuation, there is bondage, samyojana. Bound by delight and attachment, a monk is called one dwelling with a companion. Even though a monk who dwells thus resorts to remote forest lodgings where there are few sounds and little noise, desolate, hidden from people, appropriate for privacy and seclusion, he is still called one dwelling with a companion. For what reason? Because craving is his companion, and he has not abandoned it. Therefore, he is called one dwelling with a companion. There are Vibhajja-vada, forms cognizable by the eye, sounds cognizable by the ear, odors cognizable by the nose, tastes cognizable by the tongue, tactile objects cognizable by the body, mental phenomena cognizable by the mind that are desirable, lovely, agreeable, pleasing, sensually enticing, tantalizing. If a monk does not seek delight in them, fret over them, and welcome them, delight ceases. When there is no delight, there is no infatuation. When there is no infatuation, there is no bondage. Released from delight and attachment, a monk is called a lone dweller. Even though a monk who dwells thus lives in the vicinity of a village, associating with bhikkhus and bhikkhunis, with male and female lay followers, with kings and royal ministers, with sectarian teachers and their disciples, he is still called a lone dweller. For what reason? Because he has abandoned his companion of craving. Therefore, he is called a lone dweller. Monks, wanderers of other sects, prescribe these three kinds of solitude. What three? Solitude with respect to robes, solitude with respect to alms food, and solitude with respect to lodgings. This is what wanderers of other sects prescribe as solitude with respect to robes. They wear hemp robes, robes of hemp mixed cloth, shroud robes, rag robes, robes made from tree bark, tiger skins with claws attached, robes of kusa grass, woven jute or sewn together fruit, a blanket made of human head hair or of wool, a covering made of owl's wings. This is what wanderers of other sects prescribe as solitude with respect to alms food. They eat fermented vegetables, millet, jobs, tears, rice, sweepings, resin, algae, rice, bran, rice crust, gum, benjamin, or cow dung. They subsist on forest roots and fruits. They feed on fallen fruits. This is what wanderers of other sects prescribe as solitude with respect to lodgings. A forest, the foot of a tree, a charnel ground, woodland, thickets, the open air, the haystack, a chaff house. In this Dharma and discipline, monks, there are these three kinds of solitude for a monk. What three? 1. A monk is virtuous, he has abandoned immorality and is thus secluded from it. 2. A monk holds right view, he has abandoned wrong view and is thus secluded from it. 3. A monk is one whose tents are destroyed. He has abandoned the tents and is thus secluded from them. He is then called a monk who has attained the pinnacle, attained the core, one who is pure, established in the core. Note that such excerpts from the Tipitaka demonstrating the Buddhist point of view in relation to analytic reflection can sometimes lead people to see only a limited and incomplete picture of Buddhism and to misunderstand it. For this reason, those people who attempt to describe the Buddhist teachings should cite scriptural passages with care. They should be able to distinguish between those teachings which express universal or general principles and those which pertain to specific aspects or circumstances, or which have restrictions. They should provide a complete set of examples, or explain the relevant circumstances or qualifications, so that the reader or listener understands Buddhism correctly.